What's the hardest moment you've had in your life and in your sport, if you like?
Hardest moment I've had in my life. Probably watching my wife give birth. That was pretty tough. That was a grueling process, but incredible at the same time. But yeah, I mean, that was tough, watching your wife go through that, pain and suffering, and there's nothing you can do really to help. That was tough. And I suppose in terms of rugby, just the injuries. The most frustrating thing for me as an athlete, as a rugby player, all you want to do is play. As a competitive individual, I want to be out there competing, and I've had a lot of that taken away from me due to injuries in my career, and that's probably the most frustrating thing, and probably the most recent injury set me back the most, because I'd spent 9 months recovering from 2 operations in the summer, and I got fit, I got back playing, I was playing fantastic rugby again, and all of a sudden to have an incident in training where someone just falls on you awkwardly and you break your ankle, I was rock bottom, because there's only so many times you can keep coming back, and because it's just a mental process when you're injured. You've got to mentally switch into, okay, now I've got to dig in for 6 weeks, 6 months, however long it is, until you're back out on the pitch. But once you get over that sort of feeling sorry for yourself, you realise actually it's not going to be as long as you thought. You'll be back out there. You only get one shot at being a rugby player or a professional or a sportsman, and you've got to make the most of it, because you're a long time retired, as all the old boys always tell me. So I suppose that most recent injury was the most frustrating, just because I'd got myself back playing. I was back in the England squad. I was probably going to be starting. I was on really good form, and to have all that taken away from me again was really, really frustrating. But you move on, and through the assistance for the guys, the physios at the club, the supports that we get from Vulcan, that aids your recovery. Just the team and the fitness team they have at Leicester, they always make sure that you're in the best physical shape and put you in the best condition, and mentally get you right as well, because that's the most important thing, because it's easy to get annoyed. I was thinking of something slightly more fruity then, but it's very easy to get annoyed when you're not playing.
We'll stick with that idea of injuries just for a minute then. Talk us through, if you can then, the process as it's been so far, since the day that you sustained that injury, all the way up to the point you're at now, where you're close to being able to think about training on the injury once again.
Sure. Well, I was pretty much booked in the next day for an operation. Had the operation. Spent 2 weeks in a plaster cast, where I was just sat on the sofa. It was during all the snow, when the snowstorms were happening around England, and I was watching people snowboard past my window. Because we're slightly on a hill. I was sat on the couch getting seriously annoyed, watching everyone having a good crack, and I was sat there sort of hobbling around on crutches and feeling very sorry for myself. But then I had the cast off after 2 weeks, put into air cast boots. I was on crutches for another week, gradually weaned myself off crutches, and I've been training, and after I think 4 weeks I was completely out of the boot, and the physios were sort of getting all my range of movement back, mobilising the ankle, making sure it's all moving freely, because when you're in a solid boot for so long, everything seizes up, so it's important to get that range of motion back very quickly, and that all came back, and now we've gone through the weights, the training, the CV's starting to kick in now as we're getting nearer to playing, sort of 3 or 4 weeks away, and I'll be doing fitness every day on top of the weights and the rehab and the strengthening and the lower limb strengthening and the balance and everything like that, and then I'll be back out on the pitch, hopefully.
I get the impression you're probably the kind of person who's not a great watcher when you're injured.
I really am not. I get annoyed with myself, because I get annoyed when I'm watching, and you don't want to be in the stand shouting and jumping up and down, and because I get emotionally involved in the game too much when you're watching, and you obviously get emotionally involved at points in a game when you're playing, but you're more focused on your job, so it's only emotional if there's a fight or something like that. But otherwise it's about the commitment, the passion, and the focus of doing your job. And when you're watching, you don't have any of that, because you can't action, you can't change anything that you're watching. You can only get irritated, and so I don't watch that much rugby. I watch it when I'm away from my wife, or when I can't get annoyed, or I know the boys are onto a sure win.
Staying with injuries for a little bit longer as well. Obviously, rugby is the sport that you chose. I'm guessing that you probably played other sports sort of in your youth through that time. Do you think rugby's the kind of game where you are more likely to pick up more injuries, and that they're going to be a wider range of injuries as well? Is it more of an occupational hazard with rugby than other sports?
I think all sports, and I think if you spoke to any sports person, they would have picked up niggles, injuries of any kind, and rugby certainly isn't the only sport where people get, you know, injured a lot. But I'd say, owing to the nature and the contact of the sport, that possibly you're probably dealing with injuries on a longer basis, because in each game you'll pick up some sort of knock, whether it's a muscle strain or a dead leg or a concussion or, you know, a finger in the eye or something like that. There's always something that's niggling away at you for the following week until you get to the next game, and rarely you'll find one of the players that's got through a whole season without any form of injury. So it's all about management and how the physios and the coaches manage the players, because, you know, there is a limit of games that you can play. I think it's 32 at the minute. And the coaches have to maintain that, and if someone's playing too much, then they obviously give them a bit of a break, because the body's going to take so much of a beating. But, you know, if you look at the progress, I mean, I played in rugby's first professional season, which was in '96, and the transition from then till now is incredible in terms of the athletes, the power, the speed, the physicality. You know, everything's just, you know, increased tenfold, you know, if not more, and it's only going to keep going that way. But I think the career spans of the players will certainly come down, sort of, you know, probably more in line with the American football, where you're getting sort of four seasons of quality rugby before, you know, your knees and your ankles and everything else is falling apart. But there are always those guys like the Jace Leonards or the George Gregans that can seem to go on forever, and fair play to them.